Hello and welcome to So You Think You Can Dev, a KMS debrief on all things digital. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Charles Sims, the Hurricane CTO, to the show. Now, Charles is a distinguished operator with over 15 years of experience, turned tech evangelist and investor. He spearheaded more than 1.5 billion in acquisitions through incredibly complex deals in the sports and entertainment industries. So he has really lived on every side of the table when it comes to growing a technology company and making it successful. Welcome, Charles. We're super excited to have you today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Now, Charles, do you want to give a little bit of information on your background and how you came to be this investor and evangelist from an operator?
Absolutely. So I originally started out in management consulting. Actually, technically, I originally started out in entertainment when I first came out here to LA. I was going to be a big time producer and found myself doing a lot of line production, production management, project management within the entertainment industry. My undergrad actually was in entrepreneurship and project management itself. And so I kind of blended the two loves I had between film production, project management, and realized I'm not talented enough to be in front of the camera, but I can be really good behind and orchestrating all the bits and pieces there. But from a rough couple, I would say rough couple of productions, just about getting married, decided I needed to make a pivot. And what else better than to follow in my mother's footsteps, move into technology, and got into management consulting within the technology world. Spent a number of years advising your non-technical C-levels from your CEO or your COO, even your CFOs on how to properly architect what's valuable, what's not, what the business case means for bringing IT, bringing technology into an organization, or eliminating the technical debt of an organization, as we call it in the industry. After a number of years, I was lucky enough to have jumped into a really unique project with the LA Clippers. And one thing led to another. One thing led to another. The CFO fell in love with how I did things, how I thought, and was in need of a head of technology and brought me on. And so spent 8 years with the LA Clippers, some of the most amazing experiences, learning opportunities, the team that I built, and everybody I was around. It was probably the most that I grew as a technical expert as I could. After that, we moved into UTA for a couple years, and then I decided I wanted to go back to what I originally loved, which was entrepreneurship. And AI really launched that to be able to be the expert in that space and understanding how to bring a serial entrepreneurial style mindset to that.
Awesome. And I am so excited to talk about AI in particular, because I think you've had a lot of experience, right, with disruption. And what I'd love to
Yes.
understand is how does disruption today, from AI, generative AI, agentic AI, how does that stack up against disruption that you've seen in the past? I mean, I feel like it's kind of unprecedented.
Oh, I mean, it absolutely is unprecedented. I've never before seen so many non-technical C-suite personnel n- buy in more fervently to the sales hype and sales cycles that we're seeing right now in AI, yet they still don't really fully understand how to implement it other than it has to be implemented. And usually with the hype cycle in most technologies, it's, oh my gosh, we have to get everybody on this. This is the best thing in the world because they saw one use case at some conference or had dinner with this other executive that said you have to use this tool. Within a month or two, no one's really using it. A year later, the contract accidentally auto renews, and you're not you never really saw the adoption like you're seeing right now. On the other hand, the disruption is uh, so disparate across the organizations that it's not top down, it's not bottom up. It is every single piece and part of it, nook and cranny of the organization, whether it's your interns or it might be your accountants or the sales folks. They're all finding different use cases and things that they find valuable with AI and bringing it into their ecosystem.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that too. Pretty much everyone on every team can potentially use AI to become a lot faster, to become more efficient, or even smarter in a lot of cases. I think I use it frequently to gut check my own ideas. And with all of this disruption, how can tech leaders win in this space? And I'm asking from the perspective both of tech leaders internally, who are leading their own software or SaaS companies, and from the investment perspective. How do you pick who's going to win and lose with so much enablement at our fingertips?
I think right now what we're seeing is the shift to not just investing in AI for AI's sake, to shifting in the leaders of companies that are utilizing AI to rapidly move through the long ecosystem of what a startup usually goes through, but has the agility, the mentality that everything that they're building today might be completely irrelevant in 6 months. But in those 6 months in between, they're continuously evolving that and shifting whether it's that product or finding more niche opportunities or finding other spaces that they have solved something that they never would have thought of before. That those are the startups in AI that are really starting to take off and get a lot more attention than just slapping AI on top of a CRM, AI on top of a chatbot, and throw agentic here, agentic there.
Gotcha. So are you saying that those who are kind of identifying those use cases first, is it speed to market? Is that the differentiator?
I don't. I don't think speed to market right now is the biggest different. Sorry, right now speed to market tends to be one of the differentiators because we're still in the world of almost what I call micro SaaS AI. So you have a lot of small point solutions. They solve one thing. You have this one brand generator where it you put in your brand identity and it will generate you an entire brand kit. But it doesn't hook to all the other pieces as far as your design library or your component library within your code and blah 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 blah. And so there's a lot of those really micro SaaSes that all they have to do is get to market as soon as possible. They need very little money. Some of this stuff can be built in a matter of days or even weeks. They get onto Product Hunt. They do the virality where they game the system. They get enough MRR and then move on to the next thing. And so that, yes, that's all about getting to market as quickly as possible. But those aren't sustainable business models. You're moving on to the next one very quickly. When you think of the more complex business models, where it is something, say, like for the product that we have, Investment, which is all around how do you help potential entrepreneurs take an idea and build out an entire investor ready deck, product map, financial analysis, market analysis, data room, everything that comes into what you need to do to translate your tech speak, your vision into what an investor wants to see. And then gamify that continuously to here, as soon as you start, here's the perk marketplaces that you can get free AWS credits, and here's how you incorporate, and here's how you do X, Y, and Z. So like those pieces that are a lot more complex, and you're starting to piece the processes together. That's where I would say it definitely comes into it comes into being, and those are going to be the more. You don't have to be there as quickly as you can, but you need to be continuing to add value everything you're adding onto it.
hmm It's so interesting that you say that because I think something that's been a recurring theme both in this podcast and just in conversations that we've had with tech leaders is businesses struggle to understand their own systems and workflows.
Mhm.
And a lot of these AI agents, these AI products, the promise that they're proposing is we can have the AI come in and kind of automate these workflows and save you all this time. But before you can actually utilize that effectively, you have to understand what are these steps and how can we recreate them and scale them in a very specific, systematic way that's repeatable. And that's not as easy to do as you would think.
No, so it's not as easy as you would think. I also tend to tell leaders some of the most important people to help you understand how to implement AI and where to implement AI are going to be those who are potentially going to be replaced, or a lot of their duties are going to be taken away. And so you utilizing them to be empowered part of the process so that they can be the next generation of whatever that piece may be is really important. And on the other hand, as somebody who spent 15 years in acquisitions and implementations and taking over other organizations, tech and tech debt, humans are absolutely terrible at documentation. They're terrible at understanding the full architecture. They're terrible at truly knowing if I do this, this is going to happen, because you usually more often than not they're going through practices or they're going through standard operating procedures that they just do it because it's how they were told to do it. They don't know why it works that way, and that's where a lot of the AI, especially the agentic AI right now, comes into play. We've built out almost an entire operating system of, as soon as you come into a legacy code base, it's going through and scraping, documenting all of the components, all the very technical things into an extractive memory bank that then, as you want to refactor, it has all of that really detailed information that there's never going to be a developer that can give that to you, or is able to really know all the tech debt, know everything where the bodies are buried to that extent. So.
Awesome. No, that sounds incredibly cool. Another thing that you touched on in that response that I'd love to dive in a little bit more is this idea of the human element in technology. And I think that that can really easily get lost in these conversations, especially in regards to disruptive tech. So I know you do have a lot to say about this in your work and in some of your thought leadership. So why is it critical, maybe now more than ever, to consider that human element?
Well, I try to preach the concept of empathetic innovation, where most of the time when I would be going into organizations and you're talking to accountant number one or accounts payable person number two, their guards already up. They're already frustrated. They feel like they're going through the Inquisition. And what I used to try to say is like, I'm here to help. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to go tattle on how terrible systems are here, because I've been in so many of these situations where it's not your fault these systems are like this. This was a series of decisions, or this was you asking for budget and it was never approved. Like it's much more endemic to the organization than just individual levels of fault. And so the way that I would approach a lot of the human side, especially as it comes to AI, is don't just give the least amount of information to somebody who's not going to be able to comprehend it that quickly and say, oh, well, if you don't get it, you're not worth my time. And a lot of the time, especially in IT and especially in technology, if I can talk over your head, then I'm just going to do that, because I can just keep talking, and you're going to kind of try to butt in, but you don't really feel comfortable, or you start to feel defensive, and then you have that disconnect between the technical person, because it's almost like a doctor talking to a patient. The patient's never going to be able to speak at the same level of a doctor, but some of the best doctors have the great bedside manner. They know how to translate. They know how to bring that empathy into the conversation, because they're talking to another human that might be scared. They might be angry. They're not angry at you. They might be worried that they're going to lose their job. There might be so many of these things that are human pieces to the equation that you need to remember and hold on to when you're having these conversations, when you're talking about transformational change. And selling internal innovation and internal transformation isn't just selling it to the CEO or CFO, it's selling it internally. It's getting everybody excited and involved. And there will always be those who don't want to. And it's not your job to force them, it's your job to take the entire organization into the next stage.
I really like the phrase you used of empathetic innovation. And I think to your point, you need to understand how people are operating to even make this technology work in the first place. And
Mhm.
you made the point earlier about, can you get them involved to empower them to elevate their roles? Automation, I think, is a scary thing for a lot of people. And if you tell them, oh, nothing's going to change, we just want to know what you do every day so we can feed it into a bot, then people are going to be really concerned about that. And they might withhold information. You might not get the full picture, but the more you can involve them, I think the better the technology itself is going to work too.
Mhm. Well, and the other thing is the conversation shouldn't be, hey, I want to replace all the things that you like to do. It should be, I want to replace all the stuff you hate doing. When you talk
Hmm.
to a filmmaker, the number of times I've talked to filmmakers, say a documentarian, who hates doing taxes. They hate doing the books. They hate do like there's these parts of their job that they hate doing, but they just have to do it because it's status quo. It's what you have to do to be able to go through it. That's the type of thing that I always say. Don't you want to be the one who doesn't have to document every single thing? Because as you're working with whether it's code or your marketing plans or your board book and your presentations, that you're not having to go and do the deep research and go find that one file that is hidden way down in the depths of the library to get to it. Those pieces are great because that's what AI can be really good at. But bringing the human touch to it, that's where we as humans can be very um, scared to dive in. But once we have kind of that unique connection, then you can do some really amazing things and reduce the stuff that you just don't enjoy doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really succinct and elegant way to put it, right? Is we can make your job more enjoyable, a little bit more high level or even creative. Um, and I kind of want to look a little bit big picture because we've been talking a lot about these intersections. Why do you think that tech companies in particular have such a hard time with the intersection of business and technology and people and software?
Tech people have their own language. Business people have their own language, and they both think they're right, and they're both wrong, and they're both right. So the way that a lot of the disconnect happens is one, when you have a business person that is trying to sell something that they don't truly fully understand or comprehend, or when you have a very technical person that doesn't know how to explain or describe the value, what the business opportunity is in terms that the non-technical executives really enjoy. And historically, the market is what shows what tech works and what tech doesn't. And if this CRM is the one that the team actually uses, Salesforce blows up and they go inquire a bunch of like, and then it becomes synonymous with, even though the CEO has no idea why the heck they never used a CRM when they were first in sales. They had the black book, they did this, that, and the other, and pounded the pavement. But it's now I mean, it's the standard of doing business. And now today we're in this weird spot where they're now just throwing anything because everybody's scared that they're going to lose the race. And so this is a great opportunity for technology and business leaders to unite and be able to say, hey, I know I don't know exactly how you're talking, but I trust that you have my back and I have yours, and I want to empower you. Help me really lead innovation here. Help me change, become a part of the strategic operations, not just keeping the lights on, not just a budgetary piece.
No, absolutely. Trust is so critical, I think, especially in the face of disruption, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something that you see. It's very easy in certain parts of the business to attribute the value of the department, value of the employee, um, to the revenue that's generated. And IT and technology tends to be one of those where it's really hard to value what are the dollars that are spent aren't necessarily easily attributed to the dollars that are created elsewhere. But for a salesperson, you are what you eat. You make as much and you make as much commission as you deserve. And we're shifting, I think, some of those concepts to, you're seeing a lot more of your CTOs and your CPOs be incentivized towards the full cycle of the success of the organization so that they're thinking of how to make it how to not just make the most technically sound product, but the most sellable product? How do they take like continuously have vision from cradle to grave alongside the other executives?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I know we're running close to time, so I want to make sure that you have time to really leave the audience with what's your kind of critical nugget of information. And I want to give you the freedom to say what you want, but I also want to direct it a little bit in that we've identified these kind of challenges, and I'm wondering what is your solution? What's your takeaway to
Mhm.
help listeners kind of solve some of these gaps?
So, one of the things that I developed over the past year is called the Hurricane Method. That's why we call me the Hurricane CTO. And the concept is bringing chaos to calm. How do you take any sort of situation and really, if you're in the thick of it, drive towards the right solutions. And there's five pieces to the framework that we focus on of binary troubleshooting, empathetic innovation, which is the one we were talking about earlier, being able to have really concierge leadership, especially in technology, where you are a leader that is driving the change of the organization through a business lens and not just a technology and fear lens. And the last couple pieces I'll leave to the folks if they ever hear me talk about it again. But it's all about really connecting and driving value outside of your norms. Don't get caught in I'm just this one thing. I am just an IT. I am just a technologist. I'm just a product or accountant. You as a person in an organization, you're going to see processes that don't make sense that you can now very easily start to think of how do we create this entire company as an operating system that we're making these repeatable things, taking them out of the human element. And whether it's using NAN or Zapier or any of these workflow products, you don't have to be super technical just to be able to make some of those changes and just dive in. You'd be surprised how quickly you can get up to speed and create some really interesting things just through almost the hobby of being curious and learning.
I love that. I think the hobby of being curious is a really good way to succeed in almost any role. Now, listeners, again, that was the Hurricane Method. You can learn more at hurricanecto.com. Charles has a website where you can hear more about his thought leadership and his approach. Now, thank you so much for joining us today. I think that we learned a lot about how to really structure teams and processes and workflows in the age of disruption in AI, how to see better results, how to keep that human element front and center so that you can have success both from keeping people happy and it really enabling people to do the best work that they can, and by enabling your technology and seeing better results as a business too. So, Charles, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Addie. I appreciate it.
All right, listeners, can't wait to see you next week. And we are out.
Perfect.